Hi, welcome to Chamber Chats. I'm Bruce Williams, CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. That's why it's called the Chamber Chat. I would like to begin by acknowledging that I live and work in the ancestral territories of the Lekwungen-speaking Coast Salish nations of Songhees and Esquimalt. This program is brought to you by C-SPAN Victoria Shipyards and by Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union. We broadcast from the studios of Czech Television. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity and pleasure of, first of all, reading a book, and secondly, then meeting the gentleman behind the book, who at one time held one of the most important diplomatic positions in the world. And that came from his relationship with President Barack Obama. Bruce Heyman is my guest. Ambassador Heyman was the United States ambassador to Canada for a period of time. Ambassador, thank you for joining us and welcome.
It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Interesting times, needless to say. We're going to talk with you. The book is called The Art of Diplomacy, which was about the Canada-U.S. relationship, in particular in relation to the Trump presidency. But I want to back up a little bit. The position you assumed as the ambassador to Canada is a very, very important position in global relations and in the relationships between our two countries. It must have been a bit of a task to take it on in the first place, but you did it with grace and honor. Tell me about that experience.
So, look, I didn't grow up ever thinking I'd be a U.S. ambassador. That was just not, ever in the, forefront of my mind. It wasn't anywhere in my mind, for that matter. And it was a result of meeting one Barack Obama over dinner, where one of our friends said, "Please, will you join us?" I said, "I don't do these political things, these dinners and everything." But we went, and Vicky and I were stunned. She sat next to him. I sat across from him. We spent a fair bit of time over dinner talking about everything around the world. And we were compelled, leaving that dinner, to support him in whatever political ambitions he had beyond being senator of Illinois. And lo and behold, not long afterwards, he runs for president of the United States. We're there that day, he announces, and we go off on this journey of working for him to be president of the United States. And we knocked on doors, we raised money, we volunteered, and we traveled a bit with him during many of his debates in different states. And it was an amazing time and experience. I just went back to work. And then we got this call. We're coming back to Chicago to try to identify where the headquarters is going to be for the re-election. Can we all stay at your house? We know you have a lot of bedrooms, the kids are gone. And we said, sure. And by the time they left and selected the new location, Vicky, my partner in life and love, became the co-chair of the state of Illinois for the re-elect. And shortly thereafter, I was the co-chair of the Business Advisory Committee to the campaign. And at the end of that campaign, the relationships we developed with so many people close to the president, the first lady, the vice president, we were asked if we would continue on in helping our country. And we said we would. And they said, would you consider ambassadorship? And we said we would. And then, of course, they said, well, we don't have co-ambassadorships. We said, we know. But in all reality, we said we would really like that. And we had one country in mind: Canada, Canada, and Canada. And Vicky's family had originally emigrated through Canada to the United States. I did business in Canada. We traveled on vacations to Canada, and we felt, close, very close, and recognized the importance of the relationship. And in recognizing our largest trading partner, this incredible border, shared neighborhood that we both live in, this would be the amazing opportunity. And lo and behold, we got that opportunity. And it's been a journey not only during our time there, but it had impacted and changed our life so significantly that it has put us on a different trajectory of our entire life. And promoting in a post-ambassadorial period where we get to keep that title ambassador. So I think it comes with responsibility. And with that, we've been promoting the Canada-U.S. relationship ever since.
Which is kind of what we want to talk about today. I had the privilege a couple of years ago of spending the better part of a day with you and Vicky when you were in town here talking about this book, and I came to know from that despite the circles in which you travel and the echelon at which you work, you maintain a very strong sense of humility, which comes down to the title of the book you wrote called The Art of Diplomacy, and this was written during the period of the Trump presidency. So the question I ask a number of people, connected like you or not, how did that happen? How did he get elected? Explain that to we Canadians who just had to do nothing but sit here and watch it happen.
So first of all, we only have two parties where you have a few.
Right.
We tend to have a pendulum swing. We elect one party and they're in power for a bit. And then, of course, it's time. And just like, maybe a lot of other countries, it's time to shift and try something new. Well, you only have brand A and brand B.
Right.
And so those are your choices. So if you want something new, this is it. That's number one. Number two, we'd never elected a woman president before, and there were some challenges around that. Number three, the gap between rich and poor had grown extensively over the last several decades, and the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And Donald Trump, I think, in one respects, effectively tapped into that vein of discomfort, disjointedness, this whole belief that people were disadvantaged in so many different ways. And so as a result of that, he appealed to the man and woman who is the average American who has been left behind. And he struck a chord. And it was a combination of his standing as a very wealthy man and successful, his standing on this TV show of The Apprentice, you're fired, and he's very well known, and he plasters his name on all of his properties, that it became, let's try this. We tried this, now let's try this. And I don't think people fully appreciated what some segments of the Republican Party and others in the Democratic Party thought was coming. But I don't think any of us realized that, we would have somebody that was such a threat to democracy and handled so ineffectively a pandemic, which cost hundreds of thousands of lives, and then threatened our relationships with our neighbors like Canada around the world. It was just, I think, an unexpected outcome, as bad as people may have thought this might be. I just don't know if very many thought it would be as bad as it was.
And it's that relationship I'd like to talk about next on Chamber Chats. Our guest today is Ambassador Bruce Heyman, who is the former American ambassador to Canada representing the administration of Barack Obama. We're talking about the Trump election. The thing that fascinated us, well, even kind of outright angered us here in Canada, Mr. Ambassador, was the amount of compliance around what the Trump administration was trying to do among decision makers, among high-level Republicans. Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, it was amazing to watch. It was troubling to watch. Where did that all come from?
Path of power is a slippery slope for some, and some serve their country out of loyalty and duty and patriotism, and some serve out of power, hunger, and positioning. And with all of that, I would tell you that there's some number of those people that don't think of this as service as much as a career. And they didn't want their career taken offline. That offline meant that they would be cut off of money, they would be cut off of resources, and the president would personally go after them, which he did, a number of people, and demonstrated that Republicans could lose office, even though they were high quality, that they stood in office and represented their constituency well, they would be thrown out of office. And so I think they all coalesced around the guy because of the money, the power, and the threat. And it was, look, it's kind of mob-like. I mean, this is kind of like you're either with the family and you're going to do it this way, or we're going to take you out. And literally, I think that behavior resulted in a number of people that I think are, at their core legitimate people, but out of fear, made decisions to support Donald Trump in some of his, his actions.
Seems there always had to be a winner and there always had to be a loser, that's for sure. The book, again, is called The Art of Diplomacy, which you talk about the relationship between Canada and the U.S. So through the Trump presidency, how did the relationship change with Canada?
So when I left, it's so interesting. So when I left office, which was inauguration day, before that, then Vice President Biden came and we had a state dinner um, for him. I'd say Canada had a state dinner, and I was just, an intermediary in Ottawa, picking him up and, being part of the U.S. delegation for that dinner. And I would tell you that um, I had a whole conversation with then Vice President Biden with regard to Donald Trump, the administration. Should I stay as ambassador if asked to stay or allowed to stay? He said, "You're not going to be asked, but if you are asked, you should stay. The threat that's before us is significant." Um, but look, it was something that in this post-ambassadorial period that I watched Donald Trump attack the prime minister. He attacked the Canadian people. He threatened your auto industry. He behaved so poorly at a G7 meeting, stormed out of the darn meeting. It's clear embarrassment to us. That I think somebody had to stand up for that relationship, the US-Canada relationship. And that's what caused me to do it. And that's, look, I dove into this to protect that relationship. And, I feel good about what we did. I call them out on a regular basis when no Americans really did and would, or very few would, out of fear. Or I think, nothing to lose. And I think we had everything to gain from keeping the US-Canada relationship strong throughout that Trump administration. He had his ambassador in Ottawa, but that all being said, that ambassador was parroting his thoughts and comments. And so I was standing up for the relationship.
We as observers up here and your closest neighbors and major trading partners saw there was some sort of an erosion of the integrity of the office at the time, just by the pure nature of the man and the things that he was doing. And you've made the point, too, that simply changing the occupant of the Oval Office will not repair the damage that has been done. And Joe Biden is now in as the president, Trump is out. But let's talk about that a little bit. It's going to take a while to fix all this stuff, right?
Yeah, once you're on a trajectory that it's hard to, think of this as a big ship liner that is, you start tilting it in one direction. You can't make a big hard turn. It's really hard to do that. And so some of the positioning that we've done as a country has taken us in a specific direction. And that direction, is made. Steps have been taken, paths have been formed. And we're at a place now where we have some damage control to do, relationships to mend. But we've got to recognize we can't go back to where we were. We have to go from where we are. And it's going to take a while. We have a pandemic where 650,000 people have died in the United States. Don't underestimate the impact of that throughout our entire, ecosystem of the United States. And we've got very significant work to do with regard to that.
Yeah, the COVID recovery is looking a little bit different between our countries, between Canada and the U.S. How much do you feel that the culture that Trump created as president is a factor in people refusing to recognize the value of vaccinations and the value in masking? Is that a carryover from the culture he created or encouraged?
Look, this is now embedded in our society right now. This breakdown of the rule of law, the breakdown of the value of the vote, the breakdown of trust. What's real and what's not. We're watching a California election taking place, a potential recall of the governor of California. And that potential recall, the day before the vote, that there was already up on the website of the Republican, contender opponent who said that the vote is already illegitimate. And we haven't even voted yet, right? He knows he's done the work. My guess is that website was already developed. and it meant to be, put out tonight, and somebody posted it last night. And but that demonstrates, the things that are now within the system, the lack of trust of so many parts of our society. We have the CDC and the FDA talking about vaccines, and yet people are willing to take a, horse deworming medicine, that has not had any approval of any kind for this, and it's killing people. And they're willing to do that instead of taking a verified, validated, medically approved vaccine, which is demonstrating factually that people are not dying, from COVID. And yet they believe. And that's the danger that we have right now. And this danger is not limited to just the US. You try to promote positive cultural values and promote it around the world. Well, look, I think we're also promoting some really abhorrent, ideals and values coming out of that last administration. It's part of the culture now of our country, and it's now becoming part of the culture in other countries. I mean, I watch, protests at hospitals the way they were, and the people being treated, and rocks being thrown at the prime minister, regardless of party and regardless of how everybody wants to vote. I'm talking about behaviors of people, and these behaviors, maybe not identical to what we see in the United States, but it sure rhymes.
We are talking a conversation today with Bruce Heyman, former ambassador of the United States to Canada. The book is called The Art of Diplomacy. We'll talk more about diplomacy next. Bruce Heyman, as he mentioned, is the former ambassador to Canada from the United States. And Mr. Ambassador, the role you and Vicky played in Mr. Obama's run for presidency, you also, I know, stepped up to support President Biden in his campaign too. We're unfortunately a couple of days before the Canadian election when we're recording this, so we can't comment on the outcome of that. But looking forward, I think people are already wondering what's going to be the future of the presidency. Will Joe Biden run again at his age? Is Kamala Harris capable of stepping in? Is there someone else in the wings? And who do the Republicans have waiting? And is it going to be Donald Trump again? Let's talk about all of that.
So first of all, I believe that Joe Biden's running again.
Okay.
I believe that he will have a real track record to run on, and people will have to make a decision. Hopefully they'll be well enough informed that we can win this race again. But I think, every political race, regardless of who's running, is very difficult, as you even see in Canada. These things are much closer than anybody ever believes because of the way politics just is. I do think that there's a high probability Donald Trump will run again. And it wouldn't surprise me if this matchup of Biden Trump is a repeat. And, I personally would hope that he'd go on and just enjoy his golf club and, enjoy lunch around the pool at Mar-a-Lago. But, that doesn't seem to be, where he's headed. And he still, as we talked about earlier in our conversation, he still has much control over many of these Republicans. And so he's going to have a lot of support. And you're looking at early polls in some of these early states. I think the Republicans would nominate him again.
Because if not him, there's no one apparent, because they don't want to step up as long as he's keeping himself active. If Joe Biden decides not to run, is Kamala Harris going to be the go-to?
She'll be a likely nominee. That being said, look, if the sitting president doesn't run, I think that there's going to be a calculation done by a number of other people who aspire to that seat. And it wouldn't surprise me if there's, a number of people that get in the game. Either they want to get in the game to get the practice for some future game, or they actually believe they have a shot at it. There were a lot of really good candidates that ran in the Democratic Party last time, and a number of people who have not yet run for president, but have demonstrated good characteristics and qualities of running states or cities and so forth. So I would say to you that she's odds-on favorite, but not a sure thing just yet. And look, I'm still a believer right now. It's Joe. So for me to spend much time on Kamala, I'm still thinking that President Biden will run for office again.
We are recovering that relationship between our two countries. I shared with you my sleeper name, I think, down the road for the Democrats is Carolyn Kennedy, because she, as well as you, Mr. Ambassador, is now an ambassador. She's the U.S. ambassador to Japan. And I just think down the road, maybe the United States thinks they need another Kennedy. The Art of Diplomacy, all about Bruce Heyman being the ambassador of the United States to Canada, including some stories about Prime Minister Harper, but we won't reveal those. I'll suggest that you take a look at the book. Mr. Ambassador, we appreciate your time and your perspective, and as we continue to move through this, we'll check back with you again in the future and get your perspective on things. In the meantime, thanks again for your time.
Pleasure. Be well, everybody. Stay healthy.
Bruce Heyman, former U.S. Ambassador to Canada for the Obama administration. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.